Yeah, okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I'm Nathan Hill, Director of the Center for Asian Studies, and I'm really happy to have this talk about Korea, and as we were saying, not long after Korea's National Day.
Yes.
So Dr. Jungmin Han is a postdoctoral researcher here at Trinity in the political science department, and he did his Ph.D. at the University of Pittsburgh, and his research is on the socio-psychological obstacles that prevent individuals from supporting peace with foreign adversaries. He's looking then into the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. This afternoon, his lecture will be called Domestic Support for Rapprochement Between International Rivals, Evidence from South Korea. So thank you very much for giving us this presentation.
Yeah. Thank you for your greeting. And so let me just share my slide here. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. And then I'm very glad to be here and then introduce my research to you, in Asian Studies Center. And then actually it was my first time to present my work in TCD, after I arrived here since last year. And then my dissertation is just introduced, mostly focused on the public opinion and public reaction to peacemaking efforts with the rival state. And then my case is not only limited to South Korea, but South Korea and North Korea relationship actually has been the motivating case for my research. I was born in South Korea and lived there more than for 20 years. And then I just learned that some negative consequences of international rivalry, but why this rivalry never gone, and whenever leaders trying to resolve the disputes, why they always fail, especially because of the strong public resistance and hawkish elites who used such kind of the hostile rhetoric. So here I would like to actually introduce some parts of my dissertation, and then the two chapters in my dissertation that I finished last year, and the first part of my argument and evidence actually was conditionally accepted by a journal, but the other work is still I'm working on. So I just kind of combine these two. So there could be some missing parts when I present. So just feel free to ask any questions and give me feedbacks. So, sorry, it doesn't. Okay, so this is the list of contents of my presentation. So I would like to just introduce the motivation of my study and the general the question I just posed here. And then before getting into the main argument and evidence at the third and fourth step, I would like to introduce the inter-Korean relations, its history, and then I want to focus on the inter-Korean rapprochement, which happened in 2018, which is the core evidence that I found for my research. And then at the third part of my presentation, I would like to introduce my first argument and evidence and on the social explanation of reciprocated cooperation. And the fourth part, I introduce the second study. And then at last, I would like to just conclude my presentation. So here, first of all, I would like to just answer this question first, why public opinion matters when a leader pursue peace with a rival state. Actually, in political science, there has been a long history of study on public opinion, but actually public opinion on foreign policy actually has not been that highlighted. Especially in U.S. context, military intervention or Vietnam War, these kind of huge events actually were focused when people study public opinion. But it has been quite rare to study public opinion on rapprochement. And then people actually, in the context of U.S. or European countries, people are likely to see actually public opinion that does not really matter when people make a decision. But here, what I learned from my personal background and living in the context of interest rivalry, actually public opinion really matters. Especially when a leader trying to make a peace with a rival state, because of these reasons. First of all, without like broad public support for rapprochement, like peacemaking effort, leaders feel a little bit difficult to send a credible signal of cooperation to the international counterpart. What I mean here is, especially in the democratic setting, the peace-pursuing leader, when he wants to like show the benign intent to the rival state, when the public does not support it, then this kind of like a conciliatory policy can be flipped or can be canceled, like can be stopped, like at some point especially in the democratic context. So the signal they send regarding the cooperation could not be like sustained in the future, so which cannot be seen as a credible. So that is the major that could be a major problem of the process of cooperation. And the second, we have witnessed this, like actually in the history of inter-Korean rapprochement, like especially when President Jungmin Han actually he pursued peace, like with North Korea. Actually, there was like a strong like backlash, domestic backlash, especially like with the public like opposition against the peacemaking effort of the government. Actually, that became kind of like one of the reasons why he just like loads like huge like amount of like public poll. So in that sense, in this kind of a case, actually, leader when they don't have enough support from public, they had to like stop like working on peacemaking effort in order to survive, in order to like maintain his or her like domestic leadership. So that's why like public support is important for the maintenance or for the sustainable peacemaking effort through rapprochement. And lastly, public support, the public opinion is not only means for the success or failure of rapprochement, but actually public support or like how public approach this actually itself can be the end goal. So, I mean, rapprochement is just like a high diplomatic level like approach, but the end goal of the leader could be to make the public engaging in this like process. So like we call this as a conciliation, like social level cooperation between like citizens or people, two countries. So when the public does not support like enough, then it is really hard to like just lead this like rapprochement process to conciliation, the next level for the war and peace. So public support is important, not only for the success of the rapprochement, but also the long-term peace between two countries. So as we have seen, like actually still like we can find like the actually large like a number of like South Koreans still like against like peacemaking North Korea, having a really like long-standing hostility against North Korea, and then many of like politicians, especially like in the context of South Korea, like conservative party leaders, they used the hostility for their like rhetoric, and then to take advantage for their own political benefit. And then like as we see like this kind of like long-standing hostility, and then just like enduring rivalry, and then public opposition against a rival state. Why does the public resist like a conciliatory policy to foreign adversary, and also wonder what political context a state leader secure public support for his or her like peacemaking effort? So here I would like to introduce like two main arguments with the case evidence from inter-Korean rapprochement in 2018, but it is not only the evidence that I use in my papers, but here I would like to introduce just this piece of evidence just to focus on the Korean case. Before getting into my argument and evidence, I would like to just introduce like briefly talking about the history of inter-Korean relations and the rapprochement in 2018. So as you know, like 1945, actually the Korean peninsula was divided between North and South Korea under the support of US and Soviet blocs. And then 5 years later, the Korean War broke out, and it continued like for 3 years. And then like even like just a few, almost like several decades like after the Korean War, there was like serious like engagement like efforts between two countries, because like the Actually, South Korea also was under like dictatorship, and then these dictators used like hostile rhetoric to maintain their own like leadership in their countries. So only after like South Korea became democratized, like after the late 1980s, the first step toward dialogue between two countries began, and then between 1998 2007, like under two progressive like leadership, like President Kim Dae-jung and President Roh Moo-hyun, actually the sunshine like policy began. So like many of like high level like summits and agreements have been made. However, after like these like sunshine policy era, the Conservative Party, Progressive Party just take turn for the ruling governing Korea, and then whenever just like this like the governing like ruling party change it, their policy like toward like North Korea has changed too, because like the how the approach to North Korea actually is it makes the almost like biggest like the largest like political cleavage in South Korea. So but now like in 2025, after like Lee Jae-myung, the new president, was elected, he recently declared an initiative at the UN General Assembly meeting, which indicates like exchange, like normalization and denuclearization of Korean Peninsula, which kind of imply like his policy, his like engagement policy now starting, and then it will continue at least like 4 or 5 years. And then in my talk and in my like in my research, I focus on this like 2017 and 2022, this renewed engaged like stage, and then especially focus on 2017 and 18 when Moon Jae-in government initiated engagement policy seriously in 2018. So which was a kind of big shift from 2017 to 2018. So I want to focus on this period. And then 2018 inter-Korean rapprochement I just discussed had a kind of like important features, like which were like kind of unprecedented. First of all, it began in February of 2018 by visiting of North Korean delegates to Pyeongchang Winter Olympics in South Korea. So like it was the first time that the South Korea and North Korea began their dialogue with the North Korean leaders. I mean, not Kim Jong-un himself, but Kim Yo-jong, who's the sister of Kim Jong-un. And she visited this like international event and then started the engagement process. So it was quite significant. And at the same time, it was unprecedented to see 3 high-level like summits between two countries' leader, and then made like a series of like agreements, that declaration, aiming to demilitarize and denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. And at the same time, most importantly, during the Sunshine Policy era, even though like 2 progressive like South Korean president like tried to like demilitarize, denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, but such kind of engagement policy was not that supported by international like community, especially the U.S. didn't support that much during the Bush administration. But as you know, like in 2018, Kim Jong-un actually visited China twice, and then met Xi Jinping, and then assumably like asked for his policy support for Korean engagement. And at the same time, South Korean leader like Moon Jae-in sent several delegates to the U.S., and then the Trump and Kim Jong-un summit also happened in 2018. So we could see like international coordination for the inter-Korean peace efforts. So given this like a background, like historical background, case background, I would like to make introduce like 2 pieces of argument and evidence here. And then the first study, actually, I just called this like a social explanation of the reciprocal cooperation, like in a brief term, but it is based on the my first chapter of the dissertation, which was a condition accepted by a journal. So here, I revisited existing argument, which talks about peacemaking efforts of reciprocated cooperation between rival states. So here, reciprocated cooperation means like just like simply exchanged cooperative signals. So like, I just like withdraw this kind of like this number of troops, and then observing this, like the other side also like do kind of a similar act, and also like high-level meeting can be seen as a reciprocated cooperation, just like declaring some kind of like agreement between two sides. And then prior like research argued that like when public like citizens observe like cooperative signals reciprocated from a foreign adversary, then how they perceive the adversary, like threat perception, actually lowered, which actually can be linked to a more public support for rapprochement. So here, when there's a message, cooperative message is delivered to the public, and then they see that, oh, the rival states is trying to like de-escalate this tension with us, then how their threat perception actually decreases because of that they're more likely to support conciliatory policy. And then I would like to just tackle the revisit the first logic, like the observing reciprocal cooperation and how that affects threat perception here, and then I use the social theory persuasion in order to find some heterogeneous effects of this cooperative signal. What I mean here is that I'm trying to argue here is that the effect of reciprocated cooperation might not be universal. Like some people the cooperative signals may not affect threat perception of some people, like in citizens, but maybe the others, like it could be effective. So in order to make an argument of this, actually I use this like socio-psychological theory regarding like persuasion. So here in the literature of persuasion, there are three important components: speaker, message, and audience. So speaker is a persuader, and then message is the means of the persuader to change the belief or attitudes of audience. And then in social psychology, there are some studies arguing that the message is really important. Like the message should be effective enough, or the qualities should be important enough. But at the same time, social psychologists emphasize the connection between speaker and audience. To what extent the message is effective is important, but still there must be some social boundaries that combine these speaker and audience together. So they are whether they come from the same region, or their racial background, or whether they share the gender or not. Some kind of this a social identity. And then I just applied this theoretical concept to the case of inter-Korean rapprochement in 2018. And then here, North Korea sends a cooperative message. So here is a message for cooperation. And then just as a reminder, the previous literature says that when the cooperative message actually decreases threat perception that citizens have about North Korea, right? And then we can think of citizen as an audience, like persuadee who received the message. And then here, North Korea can be seen as the speaker, the source of the message. But not only North Korea, even though North Korea actually directly sends this message, but who the person or the agency who deliver this message from North Korea to the citizen is the leader, right? So we can think of the speakers of this process are two agencies, the rival state, North Korea, and then the leader of South Korea, and of the citizens, and in the context of 2018 rapprochement. And then following the literature of social psychology, here I argue that the social identity between the speaker and audience, like South Korean citizen, is important. Like, first of all, like to what extent these South Korean citizens perceive North Korea as a co-ethnic group, like that is important. And then, when the people who consider North Korea as a co-ethnic group might be more like influenced by this kind of cooperative message. So they are less likely to see North Korea as they witness more cooperation from North Korea. However, like it could be not as much as like effective for those who do not consider North Korea as a co-ethnic group. And the second speaker side, we can think of like partisan identity. That is an important like social identity. We can think of like that like incorporate leader and citizens. So like the citizens who affiliated with the leader's political group, like party, they might be more influenced by this cooperative signal. So as they see the increase of cooperative signal from North Korea, like those like co-partisan Democrats in the context of like South Korea are more likely to like decrease, like mitigate their threat perception, but in the other case might not be effective. So here, I analyze this like with a like quantitative like a method by using two data sets. So here I would like to just introduce like two data sets for like two like important variables that I just like focus on here. So first of all, in order to measure like the cooperative message that North Korea sent to South Korea, here I use the data called the integrated crisis early warning system, which record daily base, like they just record the international events, like especially interstate like interactions, like whether they're hostile, cooperative, and to what extent they're hostile and cooperative. So I just like aggregate them and then just only focusing on 2018, and then I just like record the hostile or cooperative actions that the DPRK show to our South Korea. And second, to measure the threat perception of South Korean in 2018, I used the panel data published by the South Korean government. So here, what I mean by panel data, panel survey is that in 2018, South Korean government actually conducted this survey 3 times in different time points, but like targeting the same individuals. So they started this with 1,500 individuals at the beginning, but there's kind of attribution. So like not all the people actually participate in the second and third round, but still like good number of people just keep participating in this survey. So actually this kind of like panel design is useful to like understand how people's perception has changed over time. And then the main measurement here is like whether these people see North Korea as the greatest threat to South Korea. And then the indirect measurement of threat perception I use here is perception of security stability, the national security stability. And then here, let me just like show the graph, like which combine these two data sets. So here, x-axis is a time, so 2018, each month. And then y-axis is a net cooperation of DPRK to ROK, so reciprocated cooperation. So the higher in this graph, y-axis, the more cooperative North Korea was toward South Korea. And then this like a black dot indicates the daily based the measure of cooperation across this time. And then the thicker with this like arrow bar line shows the average trend. So as you see, even though like 2018, like it was a like measure from like May. I just showed the result data from May, but still like across these like months, actually, I mean in general they are positive, which means that, like North Korea kept just showing like cooperative actions, but there was some like variation. So especially in this data, there was like kind of high peak around the time when South Korean president visited North Korea. Actually, you can imagine that like the South Korean like visiting North Korea, and then they exchanged some like cooperative signals and made agreements. So here, and then just blue line indicates the window of the survey, the panel survey that I just introduced. So there are 3 windows here: the first panel, second panel, and third panel here. So here I assume that the people who answer in this survey might have like observed a high level of like cooperation because they're really close to the Pyongyang like summit. So compared to the other windows, so I just ran some like regression to analyze like to what extent and whether there was like any variation. So here is a result. So here I first of all like shows the moderating effects. So like whether the ethnic perception of ethnic identity matters when people respond to cooperative signal. So here the blue line indicates the people who consider North Korea as a co-ethnic group, and the red line is the opposite group. And the first graph shows their response to the question whether DPRK is a greatest threat to South Korea. And then x-axis is the level of reciprocated cooperation. So when more positive, like more cooperation. So here, blue line, like there's like a decrease in this graph, which means that as the level of reciprocated cooperation like increases, like people like who consider North Korea as like co-ethnic group are less likely to see North Korea as a greatest threat. So which is consistent with the prior studies like argument. So people when they see more cooperation of North Korea, their threat perception decreases. However, as you see from these like outgroup, so people who do not see North Korea as a co-ethnic group, their response is the opposite, right? So and then we can see kind of like a similar effects in the other measurement. Like I measure here, the measurement here is like indirect. So I use the question: to what extent do you see the national security of South Korea is unstable? And then how people like from like in-group, co-ethnic group actually see the national security instability decreases, like as the level of like reciprocated cooperation from North Korea increases. So they feel more secured as the North Korea increases their cooperation. However, you can see the opposite direction here, right? So people who do not see North Korea as a co-ethnic group are more likely to see to see the country's national security actually unstable as the level of North Korea cooperation increases. So, which indicates that like, oh, there are certain types of people who do not consider North Korea as who do not perceive like common social like a grouping with North Korea here like ethnicity. Actually, they respond quite differently from the what existing literature expected. And then the second result here, I use like partisan identity. So like whether the citizens actually affiliated with the Democratic Party, the ruling party here. And then we can see the kind of similar results. So people who are affiliated with the incumbent leader's party, actually they're more likely to less likely to see North Korea as a threat and less likely to see national security unstable as North Korea show more cooperation. However, this relationship does not work. Like, the actually increase is a kind of minor here, but still, like they do not. The people who do not share partisan identity with the incumbent leader, actually, they do not decrease their perception about North Korea, even though when they see more cooperative signal from North Korea. So here, based on this like research, I cannot say like a strong argument this, but still, what I assume here is that people who do not see as a North Korea as a social in-group or like incumbent leader as a social in-group, then they may not. When they see like North Korea's cooperation, they might think of this as a kind of like strategic movement. Oh, they cooperate in order to like just deceive us and then just to take advantage of the current moment. And then they may like do defection, show defection in the future. So we may need to like be ready. They may be showing their threat in the future more. So in that sense, like their perception even increases, even though they see more cooperation from North Korea. So these are the main results. And then let me just move on to the second the study here. It's still a working paper, but the first part of my study actually just like focus on like how the citizens perceive their leader or the rival state, North Korea here, in the social context. But here I just like change my angle a little bit, like just like more like broader context, like international context, and then how people perceive the third party country, like especially here in the United States, and how the United States like interact with North Korea affects like the people's perception of North Korea. So this is the like general like description of rivalry. So like there's two states, but when you think about the rivalry, actually it's not only about like just two states relationship. Like most of like rivalries, like when you think about like North and South Korea, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, or like U.S. China. Actually, many of rivalries actually began with not only just limited conflict between these two countries, but there's like involvement of like other countries. Like here, like in the context of South Korea, the Korean War was the biggest reason of the rivalry, but the U.S., China, like other European countries, even Ireland, like, was involved in the Korean War. And then maybe people start to think about just like this is not only the rivalry between these two countries, but maybe like this is a rivalry of like multi-parties, like multi-level rivalries. So many in the South Korean context, like many of people perceive like the United States as an ally group, or some other countries like I mean it's quite like controversial, but some people perceive Japan as an ally group too. But most of like Western countries, like especially democratic countries, are perceived as ally. But not only North Korea, like China, like or the Vietnam, some autocratic countries, or the countries that were involved in the Korean War as an opponent in Korean War actually are considered as an enemy. So people might see the war in the context of rivalry as a competition between these like ally and enemy group. And in this study, not the interaction between like these two main rivalry, but the interaction that involve like the third party countries, the other countries, might in fact how the people in state A perceive state B. So because like for example, like when there is like conflict between these two countries, people in state A may see this conflict as a conflict between groups, not between this like state level conflict. Also, it could like be applied to this level too. Maybe like when there is like cooperation between these like C and D, that can be seen as not just like a state level cooperation, but as a cooperation between the groups, which like make people like these like group division more converge. So like the polarization effect might be weakened. So in this study, just like make an argument for this. And then one case that I use in my study is the Korean case by using the inter-Korean rapprochement in 2018. So when you think about how South Koreans perceive North Korea, I mean, as I just suggested, like there's a country which like people have a strong ally image like about, so which is the United States. And then here I study like how like these two countries, North Korea and United States, interact, whether they cooperate or conflict, or like to what extent did this could affect like how citizens in South Korea perceive North Korea. So here, again, I use a quantitative method by using like two types of data sets. And then the first one, like you should be familiar with, I used in the first study to measure the level of conflict or cooperation between United States and DPRK. But I use like two period, not only focusing on 2018. I will explain the reason why later. And then the second data set, which was the original one, is the social media data set, because the period was quite wide and it was quite hard to find the public opinion data regarding how people perceive North Korea like in this period. So I started collecting how people describe North Korea in Twitter between these 2 years. First of all, I just did the keyword searching. So based on by using North Korea or Kim Jong-un, whatever words that is relevant to North Korea. And then eventually I just collected 764 tweets or retweets. And then I randomly selected 10,000 out of these 764 tweets, and then manually annotate them, whether this tweet or retweet contains describe North Korea as an enemy, or whether the tweet describe or criticize the South Korean elites or political group because of their dovish stance toward North Korea. So, and then by using this randomly selected 10,000 tweets, which I annotated already, I just developed a supervised machine learning model to calculate the probability of tweet containing describing DPRK as an enemy and criticize the South Korean politicians or people who are dovish toward North Korea. So here, the first one is kind of threat measurement of threat perception, and second is I just consider this their opinion on some peacemaking policy or the people who are cooperative toward North Korea. So this is the data regarding level of cooperation and conflict between U.S. and DPRK across 2 years. And then you can see that there's a huge difference between 2017 and 18. So, I mean, here I'm sorry that it's flipped, but it's a net conflict between U.S. and DPRK. So higher number indicates more conflict here. So here, 2017, there are more conflictual events, that there was the U.S. carrier, military ships exercise happened around the Korean Peninsula, and then North Korea conducted the nuclear test, and then there was the President Trump's fire and fury comment. So it was very and also I remember that the Trump once called Kim Jong-un as a rocket man. Such kind of events can be seen as a hostile events which were concentrated in 2017. But 2018, as you see, there's a dramatic shift, and then especially in February after the Kim Jong-un delegates visited the Olympic, and then lots of cooperative events happen, Pompeo visit Kim Jong-un twice, and then Kim Jong-un and Trump met together.
Just where in there was the Winter Olympics?
Here it was February here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was right here. Yeah. And then this is the first data that I measured the interaction, right? And then with this, I ran regressions with the data that I just measured. Regarding the social media discourse. And then let me just show the research between the relationship between how people describe North Korea and dovish people in South Korea, and the conflict between U.S. and DPRK. So this is the one of the main research. So to what extent the people describe North Korea as an enemy in social media tweet or retweet, and then y-axis is the probability of the tweet having describing North Korea as an enemy, and the x-axis is a net conflict between U.S. and DPRK. So the positive means like there was conflictual, and then negative was like cooperative. So it's a flip, I'm sorry about that. But you can see like a positive like relationship like in general between these two variables. So which means that when the relationship between US and DPRK are conflictual, the people in social media, South Korean people, are more likely to describe North Korea as enemy. So there's even with the control of the South Korea and North Korea relationship, actually you can see that the U.S. relationship with DPRK actually affects how South Korean people perceive North Korea. And then it is consistent with like several events which I just introduced. The military like exercise, like fire and fury comments, and the nuclear test, they're clustered here, like top like right side, which is like conflictual events and more probability of like describing North Korea as enemy. And then cooperative events are clustered here, which like indicates during this like period around this time, the people are less likely to describe North Korea as an enemy. But it's not only it is not only about how people perceive North Korea, but also how South Korean people perceive the political groups domestically dovish towards North Korea. So here, y-axis is different now, the probability of anti-dovish sentiment at the domestic level. And then here you can see that there's in general, positive relationship between these two, conflict and anti-dovish sentiment, which means that as there are more conflictual relationship between U.S. and DPRK, South Korean people in social media makes more critics against South Korean political groups or individuals because of their dovish stance. And then, as you see here, more conflictual events located here, and cooperative events are here. So just let me conclude my presentation now. So my general research question is when and why does the public resist rapprochement with North Korea, foreign adversary, but in this case North Korea. And then first study focuses on the this dyadic side. So this extent demonstrate that the extent to which North Korea's reciprocal cooperation reduces antagonism toward North Korea depends on how they perceive North Korea's ethnicity and also shared partisan identity with the incumbent leader. And then second study shows that interstate conflict, not only between just this dyadic level, but when third party involves, especially here in US, can change how people perceive North Korea and then their public opinion in the domestic side. And then for the second study, actually, there are two more pieces of evidence. So actually, here I just only show how South Korean perceive North Korea, but another part of evidence in social media is how Japanese people perceive China. So here, the effect is weaker, but still I found a significant effect here. So when people, as the conflict between US and DPRK increases, Japanese people are more likely to see China as an enemy. So this can be just this is not only about South Korea, North Korea, the case, but also it can be applied to other cases too. And also, I conducted a survey experiment by showing different countries' conflict and cooperation and ask how American people perceive China. And then I also consistent results from experimental evidence too. And then relevantly, my current research as a postdoc, now it is less relevant to social psychology aspect, but here I focus on how the patterns of cooperation affect people's perception about rapprochement. And then here, including my previous research, actually, I just consider these cooperative events individually. So I assume that public respond to cooperative evidence, not collectively, but just individually. But still, when you think about rapprochement, like it is a like process like of a cooperation between two countries, like making diplomatic, like peacemaking efforts, like across time, but within kind of certain window, right? So here I'm trying to just like test how different patterns of cooperative signals, whether the cooperative signal at the beginning was really dramatic and that withered down later, or like it incrementally increases, affects people's perception about rapprochement and threat perception. And then we already conducted the survey experiment in the context of US and China competition, conflict in the South China Sea. And then here, this is a result, main result here. When the cooperation of like China, like de-escalating tension consistently and increasingly, like during the time like certain time period, the people, like American people, are more likely to approve U.S. military ships withdrawal, like compared to inconsistent and decreasing cooperation. So there's like significant like difference, even though like I show the same number of the Chinese like the military sites were withdrawn, like, but still like how I just changed the patterns, how I just changed it, and then the pattern like affects how people like respond to public opinion, respond to conciliatory policy of the United States. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience. Yeah. So yeah, feel free to like make comments or ask questions. Thank you.